You won't believe what happened in my own home, right in my son's bedroom. It all started like any other day, but then I walked into the most shocking scene. There, standing in my son's room, was the HOA president. Yes, the one everyone calls Karen around here, and she was packing up his things. But it wasn't just a little cleaning or organizing. She was actually taking over the space to turn it into storage for her own kids' stuff. Imagine the feeling of walking into your child's personal space, only to find someone else claiming it as their own. Now, I've dealt with HOA issues before, but this crossed every line. This was my son's room, his safe place, his personal space, and suddenly it was being invaded without any warning. I tried to talk to her, to explain that this wasn't right, but things quickly spiraled. Out of nowhere, she pulls out her phone and calls 911. Can you believe that? Calling the cops on me while she's the one trespassing in my home. I'm not here to cause trouble, just to protect my family and my son's space. But this HOA Karen had other plans. She's known for pushing boundaries and using her position to get what she wants. But this time, it felt personal. What was supposed to be a simple neighborhood dispute turned into something much bigger. And honestly, I didn't know what to expect next. In this video, I'll share everything that happened that day, from the tense confrontation to the unexpected response from the authorities. But first, you need to hear exactly how it all started, and why this wasn't just about a room or some boxes. Stay tuned, because this story is far from over, and what happened next will leave you stunned. To really understand why this situation got so intense, you need to know a little background about this neighborhood and the people involved. Our community is usually quiet, with most neighbors keeping to themselves. But the HOA president, who I'm calling Karen because she fits that mold perfectly, has always been a bit controlling. She likes things her way and doesn't mind stepping on toes to get it. She's the type to enforce every rule strictly, even the tiniest ones, but when it suits her, those rules suddenly don't apply. The bedroom in question has been my son's for years. We've never had a problem with the HOA or the neighbors about it, until recently. Apparently, Karen decided that her kid needed more storage space and, for some reason, thought my son's room was the perfect spot. No warnings, no discussions, just showing up with boxes and packing tape, like it was her right to take over. I'm still trying to wrap my head around how someone could just invade your home like that and expect it to be okay. Before all this, I had tried to keep things peaceful. I reached out to her, hoping to talk through whatever misunderstanding this might be, but she was dismissive, cold even, and refused to back down. Instead, she acted like she owned the place. The worst part? When I confronted her, instead of admitting she was out of line, she called 911. It felt like she was trying to make me the bad guy in this story, turning neighbors and even the police against me. This whole thing feels so wrong. My son's space is being invaded, my rights as a homeowner are being ignored, and the person in charge of our HOA is weaponizing her authority to push her own agenda. I want to believe this will get sorted out, but right now, I'm stuck in the middle of a fight that's bigger than just a room. And honestly, I don't know what's coming next. Stay with me, because the next part will dive into the unexpected reactions from neighbors and the real consequences of Karen's 911 call. You won't want to miss what happened next. After the 911 call, things got even more complicated. When the officers showed up, I expected them to see things clearly. After all, it was my home, my son's room. But the HOA president had already spun her version of the story, painting me as the aggressor. Suddenly, I was the one on the defensive, trying to explain why I was upset, while she stood there calm and collected, acting like the victim. It was frustrating and confusing, and honestly, it felt like the entire situation was spiraling out of control. But the tension didn't stop with just the police. Word got around the neighborhood quickly, and suddenly I was fielding questions from neighbors I barely knew. Some were sympathetic, others seemed to side with the HOA president. It felt like I was caught in the middle of a community divided, with gossip and judgment hanging in the air. I started to realize it wasn't just about one room or one family. It was about power, control, and how far someone would go to get what they wanted. Meanwhile, my son was watching all of this unfold from the sidelines. His bedroom had always been his sanctuary, a place filled with memories, toys, and everything that made him feel safe. Now, seeing his space treated like it was up for grabs was heartbreaking. I could see how much this was affecting him, and it made me more determined to stand my ground. But the more I pushed back, the more the HOA president seemed to double down. Behind the scenes, I learned that this wasn't the first time she used her role to bend the rules. There were whispers about other neighbors having disputes with her, small fights that never got resolved because she held all the cards. It made me wonder, was this personal or just part of a bigger pattern? And if so, how many others had been through something similar without anyone knowing? As the days went on, the conflicts started pulling in other community members, some trying to mediate, others taking sides. The HOA meetings, which were usually boring and routine, turned into battlegrounds. Every conversation felt charged with tension, every glance heavy with unspoken opinions. I kept asking myself, how did a disagreement over a bedroom turn into a neighborhood drama that might change everything? What happens next is anyone's guess, but one thing is clear. This fight isn't just about storage or rules anymore. It's about standing up when someone tries to take what's yours, even if it means facing the whole neighborhood. As the days passed, the tension in the neighborhood kept rising. Every time I stepped outside, I could feel the weight of eyes watching me, whispers following me down the street. The HOA president was no longer just quietly organizing storage in my son's room. She was making it clear she wasn't backing down. Her attitude seemed to grow more bold, like she knew she had the upper hand and wasn't afraid to use it. At the next HOA meeting, things reached a whole new level. Normally, these meetings are dull, but this time the atmosphere was electric. Neighbors showed up, some supporting me, others standing with Karen. The room was packed, voices raised, emotions raw. I stood up to speak, trying to explain how my son's room was being invaded and how this wasn't just about storage space. It was about respect and boundaries. But Karen fired back with her own version, claiming she was only trying to help and that I was making a big deal out of nothing. It felt like a showdown, with every word carrying more weight than the last. The community was divided, and the usually quiet neighborhood was suddenly caught in the middle of a storm. I could see my son's anxiety growing. This was his room, his space, and now it felt like the whole world was watching it get taken away. Outside the meetings, there were whispered threats and veiled comments. Some neighbors even suggested that this fight could end badly if it wasn't handled carefully. The police had made it clear they wouldn't get involved unless something escalated further, but with Karen's persistence and the mounting frustration on my side, it felt like a powder keg ready to explode. I knew I couldn't let this go any longer. This wasn't just about boxes or storage anymore. It was about protecting my family, my home, and my son's sense of security. But I also knew pushing too hard might backfire. The next few days were crucial. Would the HOA president finally back off, or would this escalate beyond anyone's control? The tension was unbearable. Every moment felt like the calm before the storm, and as the sun set on another day, I braced myself for the moment when everything would come to a head, because I had a feeling the next chapter of this story would change everything. Just when I thought things couldn't get any more intense, something happened that completely flipped the whole situation upside down. A few days after that heated HOA meeting, I discovered something shocking. Karen had been sending out official-looking letters to several neighbors, claiming that my family was violating HOA rules. Suddenly, the story wasn't just about my son's bedroom anymore. It was about alleged rule-breaking that could lead to fines or even legal action against us. I couldn't believe it. Not only was she trying to take over my son's room, but now she was trying to paint me as a problem in the community. It felt like a coordinated effort to isolate me and turn the neighborhood against my family. I started getting messages from neighbors I barely knew, asking if it was true that I was causing trouble. The rumors spread fast, and with each one, the pressure on me grew heavier. At the same time, Karen seemed to be organizing some sort of campaign behind the scenes. I heard whispers about secret meetings and talks with the HOA board members, people who had always been friendly, but now suddenly looked at me differently. It was like I was being pushed out, but I had no idea why or how far she was willing to go. Meanwhile, my son was becoming more withdrawn, stressed by the constant change and tension at home. His room, the place where he should feel safe, was now a battleground. I kept thinking about how this whole thing started with something as simple as storage, but now it had spiraled into a full-blown neighborhood war. I wanted to stand up for us, but with the HOA president pulling every string and the community divided, it felt like the odds were stacked against me. What was supposed to be a quiet life in a peaceful neighborhood was turning into a fight for our home and our reputation. And just when I thought I was reaching my limit, an unexpected message arrived, one that could change everything. But what it said, that's a story for the next part. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. That unexpected message I got, it wasn't just a note from a concerned neighbor. It was from someone inside the HOA board, someone who had been watching Karen's moves closely and wasn't happy about how she was abusing her power. This person reached out privately to warn me that Karen's actions, taking over my son's room, sending out false complaints, were not only against HOA rules, but could also land her in serious trouble. They had proof that she'd been using her position to manipulate situations for her own benefit, and they were ready to bring it to light. With this new information, I felt a surge of hope. I gathered everything: the photos of Karen packing up my son's room, the letters she sent to neighbors, and now this insider tip, and took it straight to the HOA board during an emergency meeting. The tension in the room was thick, but this time I wasn't just on the defense. I was armed with facts, witnesses, and the truth. The board couldn't ignore it. Karen was confronted with the evidence, and her calm demeanor cracked for the first time. After hours of heated discussion, the board voted unanimously to remove her from her position as HOA president. They also issued a formal apology to me and my family for the stress and unfair treatment we endured. Best of all, my son's room was officially off limits. His space, his sanctuary, would remain just that. It felt like justice, finally. The community started to rally around us again, and the whispers of doubt began to fade. I could see my son breathe easier, reclaiming his room and his peace. But just when I thought the nightmare was over, I received one last shocking text from Karen herself. She claimed she wasn't done and hinted she had more surprises up her sleeve. It was a chilling reminder that even when one battle is won, the war isn't always over. So, what does that mean for us moving forward? Well, that's a story for another time. For now, this chapter ends with a hard-won victory and the promise of more drama yet to come. After Karen's shocking message, I took a moment to breathe and reflect on everything that had happened. It was a roller coaster. One that started with something as simple as her packing up my son's bedroom and turned into a full-blown battle for respect, fairness, and our home. Even though Karen warned of more surprises, I knew I had done everything I could to protect my family and stand up for what was right. The community slowly began to heal after Karen's removal from the HOA board. Neighbors who had been caught in the middle started reaching out, apologizing for doubting us or not speaking up sooner. It was clear that power had clouded judgment, and it took this intense conflict to open everyone's eyes to what was really happening. The experience reminded me how important it is to speak up, even when the odds feel stacked against you. My son's room was restored to how it should be, a safe space where he could be himself without fear or interruption. Seeing him happy and comfortable again made everything worth it. This whole ordeal taught me a lot about boundaries, community, and the importance of standing firm when something matters most. If there's one key takeaway from this story, it's that no one should have to tolerate someone abusing their authority or invading their personal space, especially not in their own home. Sometimes you have to face uncomfortable situations head-on to protect what's yours. And sometimes support comes from unexpected places, like an insider willing to stand up against unfairness. Thanks for following along with this story. If you've ever dealt with difficult neighbors or tough HOA situations, you know how challenging it can be. Remember, you're not alone, and sometimes the fight is worth it. Stay strong, protect your space, and don't let anyone tell you otherwise.